Hello and welcome to week 2 of the winter holiday knit along. I want to thank all of you who posted photos of your progress so far last week. I'm looking forward to seeing more this week. As you know, this week we're focusing on sections 3 and 4. Section 3 is the first section of the mosaic grill, and section 4 is another section of knit purl texture. As you've already done one section of knit purl texture, my comments are going to focus on the mosaic grill section. So let's see what we have here. This is the beginning of the section, and there are a couple of points that I'd like to make. Mosaic, first of all, is formed by 2 rows in one color, 2 rows in another color, and for this, that's the 4-row pattern repeat. For this section, you're going to be doing 2 repeats, so that's 4 rows and 4 rows or 8 rows, and then 2 rows to finalize it and to sort of put it all together here. So what you'll be doing, and one comment I'd like to make before I say anything else here, is that there is a typo in this section on the pattern that made it past quality control, and I'm sorry for that. A couple of times you'll see SK as an abbreviation, and that should be SL, which means slip. So if you see SK with yarn in back or with yarn in front, it means SL or slip. So to start off the mosaic part of the pattern, you're going to knit 1 row in ruby. Okay? The second row you're going to purl in ruby, and the pattern calls for increases on that purl row. The reason for the increases is that there's a different gauge for the mosaic pattern than for the pattern preceding and the pattern following. And you need to adjust that so that it doesn't look obvious when you have your final product. It would be pulled in this area otherwise. So when you make the increases, the reason I chose to do them on the purl row is that they're less obvious and you don't actually see them at all on the right side of the garment. So it calls for a purl front and back. It's basically the same thing as knit front and back, only you're purling this time. So purl the stitch, leave it on the left needle, go behind, underneath the back loop, purl that, and then you pull it off the left needle. And you'll do that regularly throughout that row as it calls for in the instructions. So back to the mosaic pattern itself. The first 2 rows, as I said, are in ruby. Knit 1 row, purl 1 row. Now you'll start forming the actual mosaic pattern here. On 3rd and 4th row is worked in gray, and only gray. Even though you can see some red here, that happens because you're slipping stitches. When you work this pattern, you're going to knit these stitches where you see the garter bumps. That's knit on both sides. And the only thing you really need to remember is when the instruction calls for knit 2 and then slip the next stitch, if you have the front facing side of the work, if you're looking at that and it's in front of you, you're going to be slipping it with the yarn in back so that that little bit of yarn that's carried is on the back of your work. When you turn and work on row 4, you're going to be doing the same thing, except when you slip the stitch, you're going to move the yarn to the front, which is actually the back of your work, but it's to the front of the work that's facing you. And then you move it back to knit, move it back, front to slip, move it back to knit, and so forth. So the only thing you have to remember, 2 things you have to remember when you're doing mosaic, and you probably already know this, but I'm just going to tell you in case. You only ever work 1 color on a given row, and the colors change every 2 rows. In this case, it's knit 1 row, purl 1 row. In this case, it's knit 2 rows. Okay. So that's about all I have for you. I'm going to leave you with an image of what you should have on your needles by the end of this week, and that's sections 1 through 4. Thanks a lot. I hope you're enjoying this.